The NF Acous NA20. Let's talk about it. Now, this is a sample sent out to me by NF Acous. It's a relatively new brand, but they've been also known as a different group of people. Kind of a little bit of a name change. And this is the second unit that they sent me. The first unit got lost in the mail due to just a minor clerical issue. So I'm really happy that they sent this to me and they were able to follow through with it and get a video out on the channel. Now, this is a dynamic driver IEM. That costs around $120. Let's start by looking at the build quality of this IEM. I really like the build quality of the design of this IEM. I really don't like the QDC style cable it has because it's a little bit harder to swap. Sometimes things can be reverse polarized with cable, so even though you can use a 2-pin cable connector, it's not something that I would recommend. But it has a metal nozzle, kind of a metal rim around it, kind of a fun looking design. I dig this shell, and outside of the cable connection, no fault with it. I think it's a great value at this price. Okay, the cable, a couple faults. You can't really tell what side is right and left. It's a little bit challenging. If you know, let me know in the comments below. Its ear hooks are a little bit like you can almost have to flatten them out. The cable itself it feels pretty nice on the skin. Its chin slider does work. Its Y-split's cool. I kind of like the black, unique style of it. The feel of the cable is nice. So I mean, overall, it's a pretty decent cable. A multi-connector cable would be nice. But you know, good all-around solid option. The case itself is nice. I like this case. It's really good. I can imagine this being good for professional use. It does include a 6.3 or a 1/4 inch style connector, which is a nice addition if you need it. So it does kind of help me think this is more towards the professional market. Here are the ear tips. Nothing too exciting. A fair selection of ear tips. So there you go. This is interesting. This is a very powerful V. It's very strong bass, very sparkly treble. It works for me. I think it's a fine set. It's not my preferred tonality, but it's also not the worst thing that I've heard. I think, like I said, this gets kind of an interesting take on things. Its frequency response graph isn't exactly what I like. But I think it's something that I think people might like if they're looking for a V-shaped, exciting set. Let's look at some graphs, then go from there. All right, let's talk about the NF Acous NA20. Now, you'll notice is that there's a dip in this kind of mid-range area, and there's a lot of upper treble. Now, this, again, from what my understanding is, this is made for stage use, and I do think this is an exciting, fun kind of set. So let's look at some comparisons and kind of talk about some other things. Another one they've come out with, their only other model, is the NM20. So let's go ahead and normalize this at like 850. I think that'll be right. Yeah, like right there is right what I want. And here what you can kind of see is from my target, it's going to have a lot of bass and a lot of warmth. Going to have basically a dip here right out of the 600 to 800 region and a ton more bass. Now, if you look at something like the NM, you notice the NM has a little bit less bass and a bit more treble. Like if you look at it as a tilt, like you almost have to think about it like as a teeter-totter. And so like the bass is high, but the treble is also high, which kind of kills it. Like this extra 3K, this extra 5K, this extra even 10K peak, and just makes it a bit much for me to the point where I would not want to listen to it. Whereas the NA20 gets a little bit more of a recommendation. I think it is a step in the right direction, and you'll notice it has a lot more bass, a little bit less treble, a little bit more energy, but I mean, they are very similar. But that's just kind of my take based on my ears and on the graph. And I try to collaboratively do both to a certain extent, but it's not always possible. It's possible things are wrong. And one I want to compare this to is the KZ Symphony. These are both kind of bold styles. Let's normalize this at 700. But you notice that the KZ Symphony has a little bit more mid bass, but it has a ton of that shouty energy, a ton of that 10K. There's certain things where it just hit me wrong. Like it's very bold. And so the NF Acous becomes what I call a very bold attempt at a sonic signature. But it's not it's something that works a little bit better for me than the KZ Symphony. But if you're not willing to try something bold as far as a neutral signature, it's not a recommend. But it could be for some people. The next one I will look at is the Dioko. Now, the Dioko to me is the weirdest one that Critical's ever done, but you'll notice the differences here and what you got with the Dioko, like ton more mid-bass energy, like that. Again, depending on where you normalize this, if we normalize this at say 300, and what you'll notice is it's almost like a dip in this upper mid-range area. But they're both kind of crazy graphs, and they both kind of do some interesting things. I personally would go with the Dioko, but I don't really like either of them. They both kind of have that peaky, crazy energy, and that's just something to kind of note here. Another one to look at. Now, I recently got a chance to in-house demo the Sonora, the Plus Sound Sonora, which is like a $3,000 set. It just had a lot of peaks for me. I mean, but the NF Acous, it has a lot of peaks, but at least it has a reasonable price. So that's something to note. I also have another peaky, weird kind of set, the CVJ Shadowblade. I'm going to change that to a little more orange, noticeable color. To me, the NF Acous is a little bit better, like just listening to it in ear. And it's one important thing to note is that in-ear testing of the NF Acous NA20 was actually pretty decent, like pretty solid. Like, hey, this is kind of fun. Like it gets to the point where it's like kind of a solid, mild recommendation. Like if I were to give star recommendations, which I used to, but it's too much of a hassle to keep on track with. I probably would give it like a solid 2-star, maybe a low 3-star, because I do think it has some good sonic qualities. All right. Kind of a bonus one right here. We're going to kind of tack on at the end, but I did want to compare this to another company. And this is a company called ND, which is kind of confusing for me. Maybe it's not for you, but NF, Acous, and ND, for some reason, I kind of confuse them a little bit. But let's look at some of their IMs. Now, I was not favorable to them, and let's show you kind of a progression. This is their first IM they sent me, the NDX12, which actually has a really cool faceplate. And you'll notice it has like a crazy amount of treble and bass, and how much, just compare that to my Target. Like, this is not something that I personally liked. I didn't really appreciate it, and that was kind of my take on it. The next one they sent to me was the ND002 Nano. And this has a huge gap at 2K, which I hate IEMs that have gaps at 2K. It really drives me nuts. I mean, on occasion, I found a few that have worked for me, but in general, it does not. And the ND001 was not for me. It kind of had this almost like a tented soundstage feel to it. Now, what ND has done is they have recently done a very poor build quality, but decent sounding budget set called the ND Planet. It's a clear shelled IEM that could work for a lot of people. It gets one of those recommendations for sound, but build quality is horrible on it. But the ND Planet, let's make that a little bit more contrasty color. Yeah, it looks a little better. But you notice that almost hugs the Target. It has a little bit of warmth, a little bit of creativity, a little bit of energy here. It is not a bad set, and they did a really fantastic job at like listening to feedback from the community. And that's kind of what I would recommend to NF Acous. Get a banger set. Get something that you can tune with nozzles or with impedance adapters or with a rumble switch. Do something different and unique where you can get this neutral tonality and have your exciting, energetic V-shaped set, which is, which I think could be enjoyable. If you could get both tonalities on a set, you could probably charge double. All right, the NF Acous audio, let's rank it up. Now, I do think the mid-range is super cooked. Like, that dipped mid-range is just death. Like, for some people might hear that might even be like a 4 and just terrible. But in ear, when I heard it, I didn't think it was as bad as like the graph would dictate. I like the bass. I like the note weight. I think it's fun. It's like a warm, high-intensity set. And because it's so V, like you look at it on a measuring rig, and it's almost like a perfect V. It's kind of crazy. Like, you don't see that very often, like when you measure it in RU. So it's kind of an interesting experience like that. But it is a colored presentation that I do not think is going to be for everybody. But it's one of those sets, like if you're looking at it as a stage monitoring set, I think it could be really quite nice. I don't think it images very well because I think it's a little bit unique because it has a unique signature that's going for it to emphasize certain band ranges. But it does have a nice open soundstage. It does have nice note weight. It does do a lot of nice things, and it is at a reasonable price where it gets a, if you're already looking at it, recommendation, maybe you should buy it kind of a thing, but not a strong recommendation. So the NA Acous, we've already kind of talked about it in lengths, but I do appreciate it when companies take a different stance and try to improve what they're trying to do with IEMs. I'm a big believer in house sound and trying to do what you want to do with EQ and tuning, as far as you trying to make an IEM for what market rates are. But I think, for me, my personal feeling is that there's certain things that you can do to make an IEM better. If people ever want my opinion on stuff, let me know. But I do think a more neutral tonality is probably the way to go for a lot of people. But you got to figure out what's going to work for you. The dip switch settings on something like the Monarch Mark IV, it looks really, really interesting to me. Impedance adapters to increase bass, maybe even treble, depending on what you want to do, could be really, really interesting to give somebody maybe the opportunity to have the stage monitoring sound as well as an audiophile tune set as well. Even DSP cables become an interesting probability or possibility as well. That's kind of all I had to say about this IEM, and I do appreciate those guys sending it out. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Bye-bye.
And I half expected it to be made of wood. You are without doubt the worst
audiophile
I've ever heard of.
But you have heard of me.
You're still here. It's over. Go home. Oh, you're expecting a teaser for our next video. Well, we don't have that kind of money. What are you expecting? One of those store reviewers to show up in a saucy little leather number? Go. Oh, I can tell you one thing. We are going to have a collab video. We have no idea what it's going to be. Probably Kryn, maybe Chris, or Joyce. Don't deny it. She's got range. Go. Get out of here.
Go! Go!
Go.
Go on with you!
You're mid, you're mid, you're mid, you're legendary. You're mid, Jaytiss out.